Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Policy and Finance Committee meeting for February 9th, 10 a.m. We have some new committee members, so I wanted to introduce Michelle Bradbury from District 7. And we have today David Banks from District 4. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves at all for the Policy and Finance Committee? I'm good. Good, okay. That was more of a joke, but all right, thank you anyway. Thank you, staff, for being here. Thank you, everybody who attended as well. We can go ahead and do call to order. You want to state your presence?
Pardon?
You want to state your presence?
Present. Sorry.
It's okay.
Here.
Okay. All right. We are all here. We have 3 members here. We have a little bit on our action items. We have 4 items on our action items and 1 for our non-action. I'm imagining that the people here who came today, although we didn't have any public comments signed up ahead of time, they will want to discuss a little bit of the main topic that's a non-action item for today. So we want to make sure that we give them time to do so. Our first order of business is to elect the 2026 committee chair. And we would like each of our council members committee members to give their recommendation for who they believe the chair should be.
I nominate Councilman Miller.
I nominate Councilman Miller also.
All right. I will nominate myself, and so with that 3, I believe we can go ahead and name the chair for this year.
Councilmember Miller, I believe you should have a vote.
Yeah.
I thought that's what we just did. I apologize. So it's officially a vote.
Yes.
David Banks, what would be your vote for chair for 2026?
I vote yes for Councilman Miller.
I vote yes as well. Michelle?
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. That's 3 yeses. Are we good on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next will be to approve the November 12th, 2025 meeting minutes. It has been a while, and we have some new committee members, but I did look over those, and they look exactly how it went down for that meeting. So I'll take a motion to approve.
I have had an opportunity to look over the meeting, the minutes, so I make a motion to approve.
I second.
Second, first by David Banks, seconded by Ms. Bradbury. Those are approved. And we can move right into our action items. Like I said, we have a lot to get to today. I want to make sure we do that. The first is our charter ordinance for the Redistricting Commission. Staff, would you like to take over on that?
Excuse me. Randy Roy Bachman, Senior City Attorney. I'm here to discuss the charter ordinance for redistricting of the commission.
Okay, you're ready?
So this came from a recommendation from the Citizen Government Review Committee. They requested a change of the composition of the Redistricting Commission from 9 members to 10 members, with the 10th member being appointed at large by the administrative judge of the Topeka Municipal Court, and that 10th member serving as chairperson. The other recommendation was that when determining boundary lines, that the commission do not consider the council members residents. So what we did was we made those changes. We had to amend a charter ordinance as well as a regular ordinance to incorporate those recommendations from the Citizen Government Review Committee. So at this time, I would stand for questions.
Okay,
May I ask a question?
absolutely. Mr. Banks?
What was the purpose of going from 9 to 10? What significance?
I can answer that question. However, there is a member from that committee who is here, who may also want to address that if that is appropriate for.
Morning, council member. I'm Jim Kalp. I was the chair of the Citizens Government Review Committee, and I'm a guy with bad hearing. So could I hear your question again, sir?
I was wanting to know the significance of going from 9 members on this committee to 10.
Well, I think, council member, what the thinking of the committee was, and we didn't have much way of public input about it, is really within the confines of the committee itself, a discussion of review of the charter, the city charter. Wanted to make sure every council district had a representative on the commission, and then one person from the outside, and the discussion landed on in terms of getting a judge to serve as that 10th person and to serve as the chair. So, but
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That's good.
And it would add, just for the record, Mr. Chairman, that we have looked at the amendments to the charter ordinance, and it looks like it achieved everything that the review committee wanted to see done in that recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Bradbury, do you have any questions on that? Ready?
What is the benefit of having the 10th person versus just keeping it at the 9?
Do you want to answer that? The benefit of having 10 people on the commission instead of 9.
Nothing magic about the number, council member. It's just wanted to make sure, again, everybody on every council district, every council member had some representative on the commission, and then somebody else from outside the city council serving as chair. So that explains the number, and in terms of again, the person, as I just said, a judge would seem to be a logical person that would be totally independent of the whims and caprices of the city council or the members of that redistricting commission. So, okay. Thank you.
All right, are there any more questions from there? Okay. I'm an advocate. When we have new committee members, I'm not big on taking a lot of action on their first meeting. So I wonder what the appetite would be to be able to move this to our next policy and finance meeting, simply for the fact of making sure that our new committee members have the time to be able to digest and give a proper vote to this.
I think we can move it to the next meeting.
Okay.
And I did just want to make sure there's no confusion. The 10th member of the commission would be appointed at large by the administrative judge. The judge himself would not serve on the commission.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes. All right, do I have a motion to move this action item to the next one, to the next policy and finance meeting, so that we can make sure that everybody has the opportunity to be able to look over this?
I make the motion.
Second.
It is so moved. We will have that charter ordinance, the redistricting commission vote at the next policy and finance.
Chair, the motion has been made and seconded, but we need to have a vote on the motion.
I apologize. I'm sitting here trying to go through. Let me slow down a little bit. Can I please get a vote for the charter ordinance being moved to the next policy and finance meeting?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
3 yeses, 0 nays. That action is moved to the next policy and finance meeting. 4B, the ordinance for the redistricting commission. Most likely, we should just go ahead and move that as well.
Yes, Chair.
That sounds like the best thing to do. I'll make a motion to move the ordinance to the next policy and finance committee to go along with the charter ordinance.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. May we please take vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, that's 3 yeses and 0 nos. 4B is also moved into the next Policy and Finance Committee meeting. Now, we'd like to take up 4C, ordinance for the chicken and roosters. Staff, will you please lead that?
So the ordinance for chicken and roosters, this was last heard, I believe, in November as well. Essentially, it came to the city's attention that there may have been an issue with individuals having roosters on properties, maybe disturbing neighbors. And so legal was asked to draft a proposed ordinance addressing the issue of roosters on properties within the city of Topeka limits. And in addition, we have also addressed the number of chickens that would be permitted, as well as addressing permitting issues or establishing a permitting process for chickens within city limits. And we also have Jessica Bowers here from Animal Control who can speak on the issue. I believe there was a request for Ms. Bowers to provide some documentation or do some research as to what other cities were doing with regards to these issues, and I think she has prepared that for you too.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself again. I am the supervisor for animal control, and I've been in the position for over a year now. We do have a chart. I know we went over a lot of the information in November. I'll just wait for that to get pulled up. So I was able to get this chart made, and these are just some of the cities that I looked up to see about their ordinance. Sorry, I'm like at a weird angle here. So I did see that a lot of cities did ban roosters. I didn't put Kansas City, Missouri on there, but I'd have to say Kansas City, Missouri is maybe the only one that I have seen that just did not have any restrictions on roosters or chickens really at all. So as you can see here, we have a lot of no's for roosters allowed. Overland Park, yes, it's more than 3 acres. A lot of them, kind of restrict, what square footage they have. It depends on, how much land you have, if you can have a certain amount of chickens. So with that being said, I know that we do get a lot of calls for disturbing peace because of roosters or too many chickens. At the end of the day, if you have a lot of chickens on your property or roosters, there's going to be a little bit of a smell and unsanitary conditions issue. And then also, even when you get a lot of chickens together, they are still loud. So I do think that this is something we definitely need to look into. We get a lot more calls than I think people think. But I know when I looked into it in November, we had well over 100 calls just documented. I'm not saying that there isn't more. It's just a lot of things get sent to my voicemail, and I deal with a lot of things over the phone as well. So with me being right there, taking the voicemails, going through See, Click, Fix, things like that, it has definitely been where we see a lot of people getting more roosters, getting more chickens, especially with the egg prices. Things like that. So we did I looked and I researched to see how many would be a good number, especially for Topeka, and what would fit our, just our economy, things like that. And then she can kind of go over the limit that we think that we should have. But I definitely do think that at this point, roosters and making sure there's no roosters under 3 acres would be definitely something that we should look into.
We had suggested a limit on the number of female chickens permitted on any property within the city. And based upon discussion with Ms. Bowers, we thought 8 would be about a perfect number. You get more than that, you're running into where you have unsanitary conditions. On properties, you have noise issues and just some, I guess, issues with the condition that the chickens are being kept in. for not only for neighbors, but for the chickens themselves. And so we thought 8 would be an appropriate amount, but also it would provide the average family with enough eggs that they would need. So they would have enough eggs for them, and it would lessen the noise and smell and all the other issues that accompany a large number of chickens.
Thank you very much. First off, I appreciate the layout right here with the picture. That was cute. Okay, so here's what my question is. And actually, before I get to my question, I want to make sure that I offer the floor to my committee members. Mr. Banks, do you have any?
Yeah, how would you enforce an ordinance like that? Because in my neighborhood, I don't know, I'm from Chicago, so a chicken is a chicken to me. I probably saw my first real chicken when I moved here in the 80s. I saw one up close, I guess, on my way to Atchison. But I mean, how would you know? I mean, when someone complains about the noise and you go out, I don't know how you would enforce that ordinance. You take the chickens or the roosters?
So the way we would enforce it is we always kind of give that little educational window, like, hey, you have too many chickens, or hey, you have a rooster, you can't have a rooster here. We let them find some time. It's just kind of the communication. You communicate with us if what you're trying to do. I have worked very hard to actually just not be able to just go to a house and be like, hey, you gotta get rid of your chicken and rooster. And they're like, well, what do I do? I'll be like, sorry, I have no idea. I actually found some resources, and I reached out to the community. And we actually found a lot of farms, a lot of places outside of city limits, a lot of people in the community that are willing to help us take in these chickens and roosters when they have no resources. So before we just go and we cite them and be like, hey, you need to get these roosters and chickens off your property, we can also, when the resources are available, help and try to get them some rehoming resources as well.
Okay. Could you provide us with this graph?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Ms. Bradbury?
I remember watching the November meeting, but can you give me some more history about how this came about?
Well, we have been getting just a lot of calls, and it's understandable, of just people being upset because of the noise, because of the number of chickens. I will say the avian flu is pretty up and alive, so it is one of those things where the unsanitary is a pretty big deal. So we did have someone from the community, I believe last time they were here, and they did talk in front of everybody. But there's been a lot of concerns just in general, and if you have your coop within 50 feet away from everybody's dwelling but your own, that is the only ordinance we really have. So as long as they are 50 feet away from everybody's dwelling, then there's nothing, we don't have a chicken permit, we don't have, we don't have those, we just don't have a lot of things for the ordinance in general for chickens. So I do believe it's just been kind of a accumulation with the community getting a little upset about these things. And that's why we're here.
Ms. Bradbury? Okay, thank you. Okay, so first off, thank you for the work, Ms. Bowers. I know you put a lot of time in this, and I know you have as well. And what I hear in my email about this is that there's a few things. One is, why do we have roosters and chickens in the city at all? That's a valid question that folks can ask. But I also understand why people may have some chickens on their property. As you mentioned, the price of eggs is going up, and times are hard. So if someone has a way to be able to feed their family, coming up with a number of 8, I was going to question that, of how many family members. So is that a family of 4?
I averaged it on a family.
Family of 4. Okay,
yeah.
perfect. And so mixed with what the cities that are around us are doing, I'm curious as to what our language would be, and I know you're going to go over that here in a second, correct?
Our language?
The language for our ordinance and what it would be and what it would look like.
Well, from what I have in here, and obviously this is entirely up to how the committee wants to
Correct.
move, but we were suggesting not even a total ban of the roosters, just ban of roosters on less than 3 acres, and then 8 female chickens.
So if we go with that today, and just like going along with what Banks just said, being able to enforce that, how immediate would that go?
So that was one of the issues that last year, the committee wanted to have some time for us to educate the people, so that they can rehome their roosters or come into compliance. And so we actually have in the ordinance that enforcement actions for violations of this code will not commence until October 1st, 2026, to allow the city of Topeka some time to educate the people.
Okay.
And then, as Ms. Bowers already stated, they will, when they have a complaint and they go and they notice a violation, it's giving them a time to come into compliance before there's ever any citation issued. Obviously, if they ignore and make no effort to come into compliance with code, then a citation would be issued and then they would go through the municipal court system.
Correct. Thank you for that. Just reiterating those, I appreciate that. The piece about the community helping and where they can go and the resources that you found in your time in doing so, how healthy and sustainable would that be as an actual resource for our community members if people start to understand what the rules are for having how many chickens? And so we might have more people who want to start to do that. They may have not even known it was an option. So as we should prepare that people will expand on this, do those resources, do we feel like that is a sustainable way to be able to help?
Yes, I do. Things are a lot different outside of, so it's hard to explain, but there's a pretty high, want for chickens and roosters outside of city limits. We got predators, we got coyotes, we got things like that. People are constantly restocking the chickens. So it's one of those things where my resources are there until they run out. However, what I did was we have a Facebook page now, and we reached out to the community, and we had a lot of people, show the support and, want to help. And we found it for livestock, fowls, roosters, everything. So I do believe, once, the community knows, we're vetting, we're making sure we're talking to them, things like that, that it will keep coming in. It was a really big hit, which I'm really happy about. So I think as long as we kind of keep it going, I think that, we'll have those resources. And then with me calling these resources, they give me more, and then they kind of educate on where, we can take them as well. Also, they have auctions, things like that. So I really do think that it's helping with our knowledge on, expanding our resources, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, no different than, and I would hate to have to make you come back on this. I know this is a little bit of because you've been working on this for a while now.
Yeah.
But just like the last 2 items we had on the agenda, I'm not really one for taking action on items when we have brand new committee members. So we will push this, or I'll make a motion to push this to the next Policy and Finance meeting for an actual action on that date. Do I have any seconds on that?
Second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Banks. And so, can we get a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, we have 3 yeses and 0 nays. All right, we can move right to 4D, which is a discussion with possible action on the City Government Review Committee, one on the follow-up procedures and on the interlocal cooperation. I know that the discussion could be short, but it's more of a update for our new committee members. And so I have discussed with Jim to come up and give a quick couple minutes on his end on what that looks like from the committee, and we can have a little update on the information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the council, I'll be brief here, but with respect to the follow-up procedures, I can be brief, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I can be. In terms of the follow-up procedures, I want to tell you what the origins of that. It came from the committee's discussion about the first recommendation, that is the city manager position, and our recommendation to maintain the city manager form of government. But in the course of that discussion, we heard from a number of conferees that were concerned, just use the words concerned, about initiatives, ideas, recommendations, proposals from city advisory bodies, from citizens, from consultants, where those recommendations were made to the city and seemed to either not be dealt with or not be dealt with in a timely fashion. Okay, so that's the origins of it. Okay, and I'll give you some examples. We had and actually we'll talk about this later on today. I think the 2020 housing study made a number of recommendations. It had an implementations guideline or strategy, and it took some time for those to manifest themselves. Homelessness was an issue that a number of conferees brought forward, saying that that the city had not acted in a timely fashion. I participated in a study a couple years ago, ambulance service, a question of whether or not the Topeka Fire Department or EMS should take over ambulance. Well, we had a couple meetings by Zoom, and nothing seemed to come of it. I was on the steering committee, and there were examples like that were brought forward. So we did attribute, the committee did, if you look at our record, if you look at the videos or any of the other documents, you'll note that the speculation was that some of that problem was attributable to turnover in the city manager's position, where organizations would say they'd spent time, literally years, trying to develop a relationship or developing a relationship with the city manager and putting forward ideas, programs, and getting some traction from the city manager, and then the city manager leaves. And there's no ongoing city ownership of that idea, so organizations have to start over with the new city manager. And there's nothing startling about that. I mean, that happens. And today, and this has happened since the time of the committee's work, I think, for the most part, the city has added another layer of administration below the city manager. You got a deputy city manager, you have an assistant city manager. So it may be that if there in the future, if there is turnover with the city manager, and there always is, but whatever the city manager's office was working on might be more likely to be continued by that second layer of administration than it was in the past. So anyway, and I'm not trying to attribute all of this to the city manager's office. I think governing body bears some responsibility too for seeing that matters are either disposed of or go forward, but that there's some closure to those ideas. So the solution that the Government Review Committee came up with, and it's one idea, but it's a rather detailed procedure, a formal procedure to try to ensure that ideas, proposals, recommendations, what have you, don't fall through the cracks. And that procedure is set out in some detail at pages 13 and 14 of the committee's report. I don't know if you have that in front of you or not, but the committee did prepare a report that was presented to the governing body last June. And pages 13 and 14 have that, again, a pretty detailed explanation of the procedure. And the only other thing I'd say, Mr. Chairman, we stand by the recommendation that's being made and would ask for the city to consider it and agree with the city attorney's office that that's something that could be implemented by policy. You don't need to be doing it by ordinance, certainly not by charter ordinance. But one thing that you might want to do or ask staff to do is to do a comparison with the procedure we have set out in the report to similar procedures that other cities in Kansas and nearby states follow. Overland Park, Olathe, Kansas City, excuse me, Wichita, Lawrence, maybe Oklahoma City, Des Moines, go as far as you want, but there's nothing extraordinary about the proposal that we're making here, the procedure. Other cities do it, but again, bottom line, the intent is just to see that ideas don't fall through the cracks. So that wasn't very brief, I'm sorry.
No worries. We appreciate that, Jim. Before I say anything on it, Mr. Councilmember Banks, do you have anything?
Yeah, I understand what we do in this double form of government, but I have recently heard throughout the city that there is a call for a change to push a vote to go back to a strong form, mayor form of government. I don't know what that would look like if it happens. I sometimes ponder the idea whether it's beneficial for us to have this two-headed form of government and face the public's criticism of it, and we continue to go down the same path. Just a thought.
Well, I've lived in this town since 1979, and including periods of time when there was a strong mayor form of government, an administrative form of government. And I think, Councilman, my observation, and I shared this with the committee, was that, number one, for a number of reasons, the strong mayor, city council, administrative form of government did not work well for at least in that period of time. It's a legitimate form of government, but it did not work well for Topeka. It was a very fractured and, in my opinion, very chaotic. And I've dealt with local governments for my whole life, for over 40 years. It was a very chaotic time in the history of Topeka. So that gave rise to the city manager form of government. I think upon the recommendation of a previous iteration of the Citizen Government Review Committee back in 2014, or maybe earlier than that, Council, anyway, it didn't just drop out of the sky. It was a reaction to what the reality was in Topeka at that time. Number two, while the work of the Citizen Government Review Committee did not get much public attention, and that is something I'd like you guys to think about, in the future, the next time it goes around, there was not very much public input. I think we had one conferee submitted in writing comments regarding going to the city, strong mayor form of government, abandoning the city manager. But outside of that, we didn't hear that from anybody. And so that was where we were, not getting any public input in opposition to the continuation of the city manager form of government. So we went forward with it, and that was recommendation number one, which has already been sent on to the city council.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. I will say that I was hoping that we could discuss that possibly later because it has been sent over. But I want to reel us back into the issues for today because I have some thoughts on that. As you say, it's very chaotic. Yes, when you go to that, it would be... I'm
being kind, Mr. Chairman.
Right. You'd be at the whims of an elected official for the city, and then that's not necessarily a huge discussion for right now, but as you could understand, could be probably problematic. Regardless if you have a very upstanding mayor like we do right now, it's still, you can get away from that. So bringing it back to what we're talking about today, Councilmember Bradbury, do you have anything?
My comment is more up on the follow-up procedures. I think it's a good idea that we do have something in place to follow up on, because I think it's a waste of time to have a citizen review board and then not do anything with the input they're providing. So I do support the follow-up recommendations.
Thank you. And I'm pretty sure that it's not just about from the commission, correct? It's about the public at large when they reach out to us about different situations, what the procedure would be. No matter how, what you would quote unquote, big or small, because whoever's bringing the issue to us, to them, it's a big issue. It may be a minor issue for us at the time, or it may have been not necessarily litigated, but we've gone through figuring out what the pros and cons are and what we're legally able to do for any situation. So we don't ever want to minimize the public's input and what their comments are. But we also understand that there are a lot of layers to different things and a lot of factors that sometimes citizens may not think of. So when it takes time for legal to do their work, it takes time for staff to do their work. You know, some issues may be able to be handled in a week, and some may take a year or two. So I completely understand what you're saying there, Jim, and I appreciate this discussion. I do want to touch base on the interlocal cooperation as well. Would you mind spending a couple minutes on that, please?
Right, well, this is a apple pie type thing, right? Everybody's for interlocal cooperation, interlocal agreements that bring about efficiencies and cost savings for the taxpayers. The full recommendation that we made is in page 16 of the full committee report. It's really three-part. There is one thing I would like to clarify on the implementation write-up that you have in front of you in the agenda materials. The committee made three recommendations that relate to interlocal agreement. One is for there to be ongoing joint meetings of the governing body and the Board of County Commissioners to discuss matters of mutual concern, ways to cooperate, whether it's formal or informal, but just do something quarterly, semi-annually, just lock it in to ensure that there's that ongoing discussion with that body, the other principal local government in the county. And the second thing was, another thing was to consider creating a body comparable to other joint bodies. So you have a JADO, to have a city-county joint body created by interlocal agreement that would have as its mission, again, on an ongoing basis, to identify areas where there could be cooperation. And that doesn't mean just cooperation between the city and the county. It could be between city and townships, county and townships, water districts, what have you, any of the local units of government where there might be an opportunity to save the public money and increase efficiencies. But the third recommendation is one that is not dependent upon any joint action with the county, and that is just to send somebody from City Hall over to the Secretary of State's office to review the existing interlocal agreements that are on file there. And the purpose of that, and is a pretty straightforward and short-term assignment, would be to identify interlocal agreements that other units of government in Kansas have entered into that may not have been thought of in Topeka. When I was with the League of Municipalities, that we maintained on an ongoing basis an inventory of those records, of those agreements. I'm not sure if that's done now, but those full set of agreements were on file with the Secretary of State's office. And the reason I go into that, Mr. Chairman, is just because I think on the you could read the implementation language to suggest that needs to be done in coordination with the county. And that was not the committee's intent, and I didn't want the implementation to be read that way to say that, that it had to be done with the county's participation. So.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate that. City staff, is there any follow-up that you would like to clarify or speak to from that memorandum?
I don't believe so. Regarding the interlocal cooperation, I mean, the starting point, if that's something that this committee wants the city to look into, is getting with Shawnee County Board of Commissioners and seeing if they're even willing to consider doing this.
Because that was my question. That was my next question, to see if we've even presented this idea to the county commissioners at all?
No, we have not. So
Okay.
that would be something we would do at your directive.
Okay. I don't see a problem with at least having the conversation and see what, because we had one meeting, I believe, late 2024, in the middle of 2024. The last joint meeting was October 2024. The last joint meeting with, thank you, Ms. Bowers. And I agree, those conversations and discussions and meetings need to happen more frequently. Even after that meeting, or at that meeting, I weren't sure if we were all there for the right reasons and speaking on the same subjects in order to go forward together. And I think there is an appetite to do so. We just need to make sure that there's actual items that we can discuss, have some timelines on, and make actual moves on. Just as a general meeting, kumbaya, I don't think it's very good use of any resources or any tax dollars in those meetings. But if we have something for a directive that we can come up with ahead of those meetings, and I think those would be good discussions to have. So I certainly myself support a little more interlocal cooperation. Committee members, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I think it's the only way our city can be progressive is that we work as a union. I don't see any reason why that would even be an issue. That is the only way that we're going to be able to progress, is that we're going to have to work together.
I agree. I think it's a good idea if we at least make the attempt and try to establish that.
Thank you, committee members. City staff, if you could, please reach out to the county and see how often they would like to have a discussion and how they would like that to look. Again, this just heard from the committee members here. We all feel the same, that we do need to have more cooperation, and I imagine that they probably feel the same way, and I imagine there's some other council members that feel that same way. So I would like us to be able to try to get that moving a little more than what it has been since, what they say, October 2024. That's entirely too long. So even if it's on a semi-annual basis, I think that would be something that would be a positive change for our community.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, what I mentioned earlier, that we're looking for cooperation between the city and the county and other local units of government, townships and so on. I omitted a very significant layer, type of local government, that's the other cities in the county. I think if you go around the state, particularly in the hard economic times in a lot of these communities, you'll find agreements between cities and counties where virtually every municipal service is done jointly or in cooperation with the county or township, just sharing equipment, sharing personnel, and keeping the costs down. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Chair, in addition to speaking with the county commissioners, did you also want someone from legal to review and try to identify existing interlocal agreements between cities and counties, cities and other cities?
That would be absolutely a good idea to do. Thank you very much for that. All right. So with no action on that, we can move to our non-action item, which we foresee as having a lengthy discussion. I say lengthy, I don't mean we're here for the next 2 hours, but I certainly want to make sure that all voices are heard on this. City, would you please discuss this non-action item?
Morning, committee. Dan Warner, planning director. I'm going to go over this presentation relatively quickly. I know a little bit.
All right, I thought it was. Good
Good morning, committee. I'm going to go over this presentation fairly quickly. So the issue at hand is the text amendment for duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes in our districts are being single-family zoning districts. Just real quick on process. So the Planning Commission has a committee on housing that met several times in 2024 and regularly updated the Planning Commission. There was a few meetings at the beginning or throughout last year. So the Citizens Advisory Council met with 4 neighborhoods. The city released a survey in February of 2025. Planning Commission meetings, so there was discussions in March, June, and August. A public hearing on September 15th. There were opportunities for public comment at all of those meetings. The public hearing was closed on the 15th, and the commission discussed the item again in October and November, and finally made a decision in November. So what's the situation here? So current zoning regulations, duplexes, triplexes, and quads in single-family zoning districts require rezoning. The rezoning process is something that is a public process, right? So if we get an application, that rezoning, we require a neighborhood information meeting. We notify within a certain radius of that property. The Planning Commission has a public hearing, and ultimately the governing body has the final action on a rezoning case. So currently rezoning is required. The recommendation from the Housing Committee was to allow duplexes, triplexes, and quads with a conditional use permit. So conditional use permit has the same process as a rezoning. It's doing something different though. A rezoning is completely changing the allowed uses on a property. All of the uses are changing. A conditional use permit is allowing one, if approved, is allowing one additional use on the property. So again, it's the same process as a rezoning. It's a public hearing at the Planning Commission. Ultimately, the governing body has the final action on a conditional use permit. Staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission was to allow duplexes and triplexes, not quads, by CUP subject to CUP guidelines. One thing to mention is that the committee's original recommendation throughout the summer was to allow duplexes by right, meaning they don't require a CUP or a rezoning. Somebody submits a building permit, staff reviews it, and it likely would be approved. That's the by right option. And so the original recommendation was to allow duplexes by right, CUP for triplexes and quads. So the point being, the committee's recommendation evolved after some public comment at the Planning Commission, et cetera. So the final Planning Commission recommendation was to allow duplexes, triplexes, and quads by CUP, subject to new CUP guidelines. The guidelines are essentially to try to address some concentration and to try to minimize the amount of paving in front yards. Duplexes typically have those garages and tend to pave, a good chunk of that front yard. So we're trying to address that. A little note on process here. So the Planning Commission's recommendation, they made that the next step for this text amendment will be to go to the governing body for action. Again, these text amendments, it is the governing body that makes a decision on text amendments. We've pivoted to the committee to talk to you about this process as well, but ultimately it's the governing body that has the final vote on text amendments. And then real quickly, I'm not going to go over all of these things, but these are the items, some of the items that were raised throughout the process, throughout the public comment. The first one being text amendment will not result in substantial, meaningful increase in housing. That is true. That is something that this text amendment was never meant to solve Topeka's housing crisis, right? It's meant to be an option, another thing that we can do to get more types of housing in Topeka. So it's never was intended to be the magic solution. There were comments essentially to exclude certain neighborhoods from the text amendment. R1 and R2 zoning, single-family zoning, applies citywide. Wherever you have R1 zoning, you have the same standards as the person across town. It's citywide zoning. The text amendment is amending R1 and R2. it should apply to all R1 and R2 and should not exclude certain neighborhoods. And then one final thing I want to talk about there was conversations about prohibiting conversions. The point I want to make there is if it's a new CUP, so a new duplex, that requires a CUP according to this process here. A conversion is the same process. So if you're converting a house to a duplex, that requires a CUP. If you're building a new duplex, that requires a CUP. So it's the same process regardless of how we're getting to that duplex. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Dan. Councilmember Bradbury, do you have any thoughts or questions?
No, I just need some additional time to review this information.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Councilmember Banks.
Nothing, Chair.
Okay. Now, we didn't have anybody signed up for public comment ahead of time, but I do know there are a lot of people here who would like to share their piece and their thoughts on this topic. And before we have much further discussion on it, I want to be able to have those people come up and say their piece. We would still limit you to the 4 minutes, giving you the 3-minute warning. For walk-up public comments, we may change that in the future, but for right now, I believe 4 minutes is very adequate for the conversation. So is staff ready? If we do so, all right. I will call these names that are on this list, and if you came in a little later and didn't get your name on the list and you want to, feel free to come by and put your name up on this list. But I will go down the list right now. Steve Sanford, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you very much. Steve Sanford, Westboro Homeowners Association. I'll be brief. I don't have any prepared remarks. I know we've had some exchange of information we previously made through the Planning Commission as well. I've sent an email to each of the council members back on January 26th, and again, we put most of our materials in writing. I just want to make the observation that, you know, throughout this conversation, you know, we've questioned the level of engagement. Mr. Warner cited some of the meetings that have been had. There were previous meetings with several neighborhoods on this issue. We've never gotten an understanding of, you know, where those neighborhoods stand on this particular issue. With respect to College Hill and Elmhurst, I see that they're here, and we have a coalition of Central Topeka neighborhoods that have been following this issue for some time now. Throughout the summer, have attended the meetings, so I know what the opinions are. There isn't support in the neighborhoods for this particular proposal. We're concerned that the unintended consequences that may occur as a result. And so we've tried to address that. One of the other things that perhaps Mr. Warner can address is we're already seeing sort of a shift in the availability of multifamily housing in Topeka. I think the 2024 report from the Planning Department reveals that the comparison between non-single family and single family homes has now shifted. Where the city's development, the units was dominated by single-family homes. We're now seeing more units being built for multifamily. I think this is what this proposal initially tried to address, but it appears that the market is already addressing that. And so I question whether we really need this particular provision. And again, looking at studies all across the country, most of the upzoning has happened in places that are having explosive growth and unaffordable housing costs, and so there's some desperation in a number of cities to try anything that works. That's not what we have here in Topeka. We've had flat population growth, and we have some of the most affordable housing in the country. It's why people are coming here from California and Florida and buying houses, sometimes for commercial reasons and hanging onto them for speculative purposes. It's not going to do too much to improve the availability of housing and the affordability of housing. In our neighborhood, for example, we have a number of houses in the $120,000 to $200,000 range that are, considered affordable. But we're seeing more and more equity investors buy that property and hold it, turning it into rental properties, short-term rental properties like Airbnb and VRBO. So we're concerned about that and how it will change the character of our neighborhood. I'll send some follow-up emails to you as well, just to this committee, just following up on this issue. But I know there's a number of people who would like to address it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanford. Appreciate you. Mark Galbraith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee. Steve did a fine job of covering most of the concerns that I had and that our neighborhood has had. I'm with the Elmhurst Neighborhood Association, Elmhurst Neighborhood. But I just wanted to touch on another thought that we have as we talk, and that is that the city did commission a housing study, a 2020 housing study, I believe, and that study includes a number of recommendations. And I think those of us who have read that study think those are good recommendations, things that we've thought the city should pursue for some time now. And we think, the city might have more success in providing more housing, more quality housing, pursuing those recommendations, maybe as opposed to this one. We do recognize that there's a housing shortage and housing need, but as Steve said, the literature on cities that have taken the approach of doing just sort of wholesale upzoning has not suggested that a lot of new housing has been added or that the cost of housing has decreased in any significant amount. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith. Appreciate that. Jim Coop.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here as the chair of the Housing Committee that's within the Planning Commission. I went off the Planning Commission a few months ago, but continued on as the chair of the Housing Committee, which was created back in 2024. And since that time, the mission of the Housing Committee has been to try to rectify, try to do what we can with the tools that we have to try to encourage the housing development in Topeka. Okay, put safe, good houses over people's homes. Okay, and we've submitted a number of proposals that we've studied, sent on to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission sent on to you all and have been adopted, changing dimensional requirements, increasing the height of the buildings, decreasing the setbacks, just trying to change the regulations in a responsible way that will encourage housing development, bring down the cost of construction, and hopefully gets passed on to the consumer. Okay, this is just one more of those proposals that we have. This proposed amendment originated with the Housing Committee. We've worked on it for about a year and a half before it went to the full Planning Commission. We kept them advised, updated them all. But it has something that's been worked on, as Dan said. It has been vetted through the community. Did not talk to every single person in the community, but it was vetted. I'm trying to give you some bullet points here so I sit within the 4 minutes, Mr. Chairman. But the city is taking some actions. You've got a land bank now. You've got some steps forward on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and there's some payoff of that. There's some things happening. This is just one more way in which the city can address that missing middle, to try to encourage development, housing development. I know you've been told this. I believe you've been told this in the past. If you look at a chart of residential zoning in Topeka, 87% of the land that is zoned residential is zoned for single family, either R1 or R2, okay? And this is common across the state, across the country. It's one reason why a number of states, at least 7 states, have mandated local governments. They've taken control of the part of local government authority in a number of states that said you shall do this, what we're talking about here. And in some cases saying you shall provide duplexes of right, okay, not subject to a conditional use permit, but of right. So it's a stronger action than a number of states have taken across the country. 87% of the property in the city limited to single-family zoning. But something that I think is striking and something you ought to take note of when we talk about introducing a proposal to introduce duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes as conditional uses into what are now exclusive single-family zones, under the city code, there are already 27 conditional uses that are possible in an R1 zone, not just churches and schools, but a number of aggregate or congregate living arrangements that we allow in the development code and have for years and years and years, okay? I can, in my neighborhood, I can convert my house into a church or into a school without going through any rezoning. It's of right, okay? There are other things that I can do that I have to get a conditional use permit that I can do in my neighborhood that don't square with the single-family housing surrounding me. Couple more real quick points, Mr. Chairman. What is proposed here is consistent with the housing component of the comprehensive plan, that being the 2020 housing study. And I bring this everywhere I go. If you all haven't seen this 2020 study, I know you've got a lot of stuff to read, a lot of things to study, but it is money well spent by the city of Topeka. And this is supported by that. Private property
Jim,
rights.
real quick, do you need a minute or two more?
Yeah, well,
finish?
yeah. Mr. Chairman, anything that I say, I would be glad to pass on in writing to the committee. I think it's important to know what the thinking of the Housing Committee was, and I'm not here speaking for the Planning Commission because I'm not on here anymore. You can look at the minutes and the video of those meetings to get more information about it. But one other point that is important.
Hold on, Jim. Sorry. We do need to make sure that we allow this extra minute. So if you need an extra, it looks like you do. Is there any committee member that would like, is that opposed to him having extra 2 minutes to be able to finish his statement?
No.
Ms. Baines, okay. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I hope you don't regret this. I have 3 points, and we're kind of in reverse order. You know, folks, what we're trying to do here is to get houses built in Topeka. Okay? Like I said, I've said earlier, I've lived in this town a long time, and it pains me to see people living in substandard, unsafe housing. There's no reason for that to happen in this community or anywhere else in the country. But to have it happen here is painful to see, okay? That's really a critical point. We need more housing. The housing study dramatizes that. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of units that are needed in this town. You have people in this community that want to live in multifamily housing, that don't want single-family housing. And it's not the stereotype that I think some opponents think, that it's people who don't have money and will never have money to be able to afford a house, okay? There's some of that. There will always be some of that. But there's also people that live in the community and maybe don't plan on being in here in 10 years or 5 years. You know, they're students. They're in a job that requires them to move around. They want rental properties, multifamily dwellings. And there are a lot of other people that, and I say a lot of other people, I believe there's a lot of people that don't want to have the trouble and risk associated with single-family housing. You know, they don't want to be mowing yards. They don't want to be doing this and that. They want an apartment. They want a duplex, whatever. That's a market that's out there. It is striking to me that when we talk about a proposal like this, which undoes some of the restrictions that we have in the zoning code in a small way, this is a small step, council members, but it's removing some private property right restrictions that are under the zoning code, okay? And I've spent my whole career dealing with land use regulations and zoning, so I believe in it, but I recognize that there are regulations that are not serving the public interest. You know, that where regulation goes too far. This would allow somebody to have the privilege, their single-family owned property, to go to the planning commission and the governing body requesting a conditional use permit. And again, Mr. Chairman, I have some other comments, but I guess I will pass those on in writing.
You can do that in writing. I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll go right back down the list. Dwayne Pomeroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. So we heard about spending a few years on this. I spent over a decade working on down zoning that this would in part overturn. So in 1992, moved into the 1100 block of Fillmore, and 3 houses north of me was council member Vic Miller. Across the street from us, a couple months later, a house came up for sale. And in that block, near Topeka High, almost every house was owner occupied, but some were multifamily, with the owner living there. So this house came up for sale, and I said to Vic, I hope somebody doesn't come in and turn it into apartments. And he said, don't worry, if it comes before the council for a change, then I'll oppose it. But then I got curious, and I went down to the Planning Commission office to see just exactly what the zoning was. And so Vic had been on the council for a few years, and he didn't even know the zoning on his own block because there was no maps back then. So we didn't have the technology that we do now. And so I had to go, and they had the counter with these plates, and you pull out a plate and put it up, and then you could look and see what the housing was on a few blocks. And to get our neighborhood, took either 3 or 4 of those big plates to take a look at. And so then I started really researching it in 1993. So the next year, Miller moved on to the county commission, and I took his place on the city council. I discovered that there was no single-family zoning anywhere east of Washburn Street. So Oakland, which was almost all single-family, there was no single-family zoning to protect that neighborhood in any block that wanted to keep single-family. And what had happened was, historically, there wasn't anybody west of Washburn that served on the old city commission form of government. And they pretty well wrote off the east side of town for single family. Let developers do whatever they want to. And that's one, okay. Anyway, I wanted to take action right away, especially in areas where it was single family, just make it that way. But of course the planning staff slowed me down and said, no, we need to do this systematically. And so it took, like I said, over a decade, and then beyond my time on the council, where each neighborhood developed their plan. And those plans, they put a lot of effort into them, and they weren't just massively down zoning, it was really reflective zoning. But these plans gave neighborhood self-determination, and they were realistic with what they had. Yeah.
Dwayne, would you like a minute or two more?
Yeah, I'd like a couple minutes.
Okay, I have no problem with that. Committee members?
No problem.
Please proceed.
Anyway, I could go on for a long time, but I'm living in College Hill now, but I've lived in, I've rented in Central Park, Warrenmead, Old Town, and Auburndale, and I've owned in Warrenmead, Potwin, Holiday Park, and College Hill. So I know that central Topeka all my life. But in College Hill, we had a meeting, and the planning staff came to us with a proposal when they were going to add what they were calling mother-in-law houses, or but our neighborhood embraced that. And we have multifamily in College Hill, and we have single family. So we're mixed use. But the blocks that are solid single family, we want to keep them that way. And when the proposal came to allow that, the mother-in-law homes, I forget the actual term that they used, but that was one of the ones. So we embraced it, but I spoke up at that meeting. I was concerned that are we seeing the beginning of the breaking down of our single-family zoning? And was assured, no, that wasn't the intent. Well, it wasn't very long before they came back with this. And then if they get this, what's going to be the next step? Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate that. Earlier, as I stated, there's a few more people that may have come into this room that, because of my prior conversations with them, I know that they may have something they'd like to speak on. So I want to give that opportunity to those that have not been able to write their name down on this list. If they would like to, come fill out your information, and then we'll give you your 4 minutes on the mic.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm speaking today as Susan Duffy, County Treasurer. But just for full disclosure, I do live in College Hill, and I have been a part of the meetings and discussions that have gone on for the past year. First of all, I would like to say, in National Night Out in the past, there were over 58 neighborhoods that were registered for National Night Out activities. In visiting with some of these neighborhoods, and they're buried within larger blocks, they have no knowledge of this activity going on and have not been invited to participate. Now, since we don't have National Night Out by neighborhoods like we would gather in the library and understand the planning process, I don't know how you're communicating with these neighborhoods, but they're bona fide neighborhoods. They may not be an NA by definition or an NIA, but they are neighborhoods that have been participating in events in this city. To speak as county treasurer, I kind of believe there are some other opportunities that perhaps before we get the machete out, we ought to look at. One of them, my job is to collect taxes, and it is countywide. And it is these are taxes that are collected and then distributed among all the taxing districts in the county. There are a lot of vacant properties that are eligible for a tax sale. To be eligible on the residential side, you have to have not paid for 3 years. There's a lot of properties. I call that an opportunity. Let's review that data, see a little bit more information, get a little bit more information about them, and perhaps these become opportunities for future development. Secondly, there's a lot of properties that are delinquent that are not that nobody lives in, and they've been delinquent for years. And so maybe we ought to examine those properties and see, can we get a hold of the aunt that lives in California whose brother died, and she's just scared to let anybody go in or do anything, and it hasn't gone up for a tax sale. But again, I think there's opportunity. And 3, then we don't put all our properties up for a tax sale when it is delinquent. And I think there's opportunity as well to look at these properties. Is not our goal, if our goal is to increase,
1 minute.
if our goal is to increase the number of housing units, I think we ought to look at things like this before we overturn. And I do call this a drastic action and take drastic action. Secondly, we, the county and the city, are both interested in increasing our tax base without raising it on the individual who is already paying, who stood in my hallway and complained about the high property tax they were paying. If we could put these properties back on the tax roll, wouldn't that help everybody and begin to help eliminate the problem of housing? One other thing, it was talking about the missing middle. In College Hill, in the month of December, the units that were sold, the average price was about $150,000. Again, below the $200,000 threshold, selling in about 6 days. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate that. And I'll go ahead for the last time. Is there anyone else that would like to come and speak? Seeing none. Council members, Ms. Bradbury, do you have anything that you would like to say on this?
Not on this particular item.
Okay. Councilmember Banks?
I'm wondering if we could get a copy of that housing study, 2020 housing study.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, please make sure to send that. I know I've read over a lot of it. I haven't read every single page, but there is a lot of information in there for sure. So that would be good to review for our new committee members and council members. As it is a non-action item, this is an ongoing discussion. There's been a lot of work put to this, and I agree that neighborhoods should have, all of the neighborhoods, not just the ones that are speaking the most. And maybe it's I say they're speaking the most because a lot of the neighborhoods that are against this are in D6. And I understand that, so I hear a lot of this. I would like to be able to discuss with the other council members what they've been hearing on it, because I haven't heard a lot from them on this issue when it comes to being opposed to this change. I have heard some opposition, but I actually have heard a lot of people who are for this as well. Not as a wholesale change, but making sure that there's clarity on the CUP process and what that would look like. I have some thoughts of what I would like to see, and this is probably the best time to be able to speak on that. I certainly would like us to discuss that in neighborhoods where it is majority single housing. I would like us to be able to, if it's a CUP process, how many people around that lot would have to give approval for it to go forward.
You want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
So the process for neighborhood notification, it would likely be, well, it would be through the legal notification is 200 feet around a property to notify for a public hearing. They don't have any sort of approval process or approval authority in that process. It's Planning Commission holds a public hearing, makes a recommendation to the governing body. Those folks can come to the planning commission and say their piece, and that can be part of the consideration of the planning commission. Once the commission makes a recommendation, it moves on to the governing body, and then it's the governing body that has the authority to either approve it or not.
Thank you for that. I'm a big believer that the public and the people who will be living around whatever project it is should have a voice, and it should be made clear that they have the opportunity.
Can I, one more thing? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely, you're good.
So we also require a neighborhood information meeting as part of any project that goes to the planning commission. So what we do there is we notice at least within 300 feet, more than we do for our legal notice, and we have a neighborhood information meeting. And the developer or the applicant runs that meeting, so that's before the public hearing. So there's really a couple chances for folks to participate in that process, either through the neighborhood information meeting or at the public hearing.
So is there a notice, you said something about a notice, is there a notice sent out to that 300 feet? So like a postcard sent to each home around that specific lot?
So they get a notice twice. They'll get a notice for the neighborhood information meeting, and they'll get a notice for the public hearing. So they'll get noticed up twice on a rezoning or a CUP process.
Okay. In 2026, is it possible for us to, with those hearings and those meetings, is there possible for those postcards to be able to have a QR code or something where somebody who does not get out of the house that often or is not able to make those meetings, that they can still give their piece and their opinions, and the QR code or the form could be directly to their home? Now, I'm not saying each QR code for each specific home, but a QR code to where, okay, you go there and you say your name, you say what your house is, so then it registers to that, and that's the comment from that home.
Councilman, I'm pleased we're unpacking this process, actually. So the Planning Commission, we host our agendas on Topeka Speaks. And on Topeka Speaks, you can go online and provide comment on those items as well. So it's not just go to a meeting, go to this meeting. You can also provide comment through Topeka Speaks that will go as part of the record. It will go to the planning commissioners. So there is a process there. As far as the QR code, yeah, sure, we've done that in the past. We can certainly do that in the future, as long as IT and everybody's okay with us doing that.
Okay, so we've done it in the past, and what was the pros and cons of doing it in the past?
So we've done it through neighborhood planning processes. It's usually a QR code to kick people to a survey for their neighborhood, or a story map or something that we've done for that neighborhood. I'm thinking, I guess I don't know this for a fact, when we did the duplex citizen survey, there might have been a QR code associated with that as well, but typically it's usually to kick them to some survey or something like that.
Okay. One of the things that I hear often in that discussion is parking. And I see in here that you have that the paving of front yards to accommodate required parking or access to required parking should be minimized or mitigated. Right next to it, I have a big question: why?
So it's probably easier to show you with a photo, but a lot of times a duplex, if you can think of any duplex built west side, east side, they usually have those garages out front like this, and they've more than likely they've definitely paved up to that garage. Sometimes they even go so far as to pave basically the entire front. So it's an effort to try to mitigate that to some extent, to make it fit in a little better and not have all that concrete out in front of that house. So it's an effort to try to mitigate the concrete.
Okay. And let's say that someone would like to modify an existing home that does not have parking, but they want to make it into a duplex or a triplex. What would be the reason for mitigating them if they need the extra parking?
Well, in that case, we likely wouldn't. In that case, they're probably not putting a garage on the front of that house. Maybe there's a situation where there's an alley behind it, and so we're going to ask them to get some parking behind there to accommodate all the units on the property then. But They are guidelines. If that's the situation, there's a modification. We will try to work with folks because they do have to provide parking. That's part of the standards.
Okay, because I think there's a lot of confusion from the public on what that would be, because parking is one of the bigger issues that I hear from it. And also, if there was new development, just for discussion purposes right now, when I hear from my constituents talking about the nature of the neighborhood, okay, College Hill is a historical neighborhood. Any new development, I would hope as someone who lives near there, that it would vibe with the rest of the neighborhood. From a staff perspective, what are our thoughts on that?
So I think it's hard to do design. We don't have a lot of design with the guidelines. I think it's hard to do that citywide and be effective because we're trying to provide design for, something that's at 29th and Wanamaker. That's a completely different character than something at, 15th and Randolph, for instance. So we're trying to do things that get to some basics for design, some real basics about how big it is and how it sits on the lot and those sorts of things, but not really much direct design. If a neighborhood has design related to a neighborhood plan or a historic district or something, then that would get reviewed through that process.
And this might be a question for legal as well. Do we have the authority to be able to make sure that for neighborhoods like that has some historical landmarks and that the character of the neighborhood is important to all the residents there? Do we have a way to, if you want a home here or here, you have to be able to design in a way that matches the rest of the neighborhood? Is there legal blowback from that?
So I will just say, as part of a historic district, it's a state law review, so it's they are going to have to comply with and get reviewed for historic. We can craft through a text amendment design guidelines that can apply citywide. It's just, how do we do that and get it to fit, So I think it is possible to do that. We'd have to really think about how to do that. When we come back to the governing body, maybe we can show some examples of some things. For instance, those duplexes at 12th and Lakeside. I don't know if you're familiar with those two new duplexes that got built, kind of just north of Westboro Mart. Those fit in fairly well right there because that is a neighborhood that's got garages kind of facing the street, and that's similar to what happened there. So that's an example where, just thinking a lot about design, that's maybe you would respond to the context, for instance, and say, hey, if you've got garages facing the street, it's okay to have garage, things like that. So
okay, understood. Okay, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Put you in a tough spot right there. Apologize. Okay. Committee members, any questions on any of that?
No, I am interested in if it's possible to do what we were just talking about and come up with something where neighborhoods could still keep the character of their neighborhood if there was something going to be developed. Because I've heard about that on a different project.
Councilmember Banks? Okay. Yeah, and I, when constituents come to me talking about the character of the neighborhood, I always assume that they're talking about how the homes look. And if there's other things that are just not being said, I would hope that they speak on that, of what they would think the nature and character of a neighborhood is and what that would look like. Because as Jim spoke to, everybody should have an opportunity to be a part of a neighborhood if they can afford to do so. And having more people in the neighborhood is not necessarily a bad thing, but I also understand what some of the constituents were talking about in regards to having single-family homes where people are more apt to engage themselves in the neighborhood. But I think that same thing can be accomplished with 2 or 3 families living in a home. They also want to be a part of a neighborhood. So I'm glad the discussion is continuing. If there's ways for us to mitigate some of the concerns from the constituents as we continue to address this issue, make sure we get it the best that it can be. I know we have a planning commission recommendation right now, but I don't think that this is at the point to where we can really vote on something.
So just a note on process. This committee technically isn't part of the process for text amendments. We've been coming to this committee is to give updates and present information. Our next step really is, assuming you don't want us to come back and present again, is to go to the governing body, and that's where you can, talk about the things that, you're concerned about and kind of suss that out, for instance. That's my thought about process right now.
No, I appreciate that. Where it's discussed, it'll be discussed wherever it needs to be, because some of these folks may not be able to be at the council meeting. And so we will certainly talk about it then. I imagine this is not the last time that you're going to have to come to this committee about this issue.
Sure.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on that item before we? Yes, sir.
I just wonder, Chairman, I know it's an issue of process, and the process is pretty well fixed, I think, but it would be so nice if we could actually have a discussion with Dan and the other staff and you and neighborhood people, so we can ask and get questions answered back and forth. It's very hard to really have a discussion in a format like this, and limited to 4 minutes. How to express our concerns over properties that we've been trying to maintain for 3 or 4 decades, and now we're going to do upzoning wholesale, and we get 4 minutes to talk about it. It's pretty hard, and it's also going to be hard in a city council setting. And of course, the CUP process really amounts to one evening with the developer there, and maybe some neighbors and some others, with a 300-foot radius notification, which is not a very big radius. I just think the process is not really conducive to discussing an issue that's as large as this for the city. I know there's a need for housing, and we don't argue that. We want to address that, but I just think it needs to be a better format, if that's possible.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I'm not against having those discussions. Dan, what's your thoughts on you and I meeting with, we have the neighborhoods, we got Elmhurst, we got Westboro, we got College Hill, and they're very vocal about this, and I understand their concerns. What's your issue with having a conversation with them soon?
If we want to have conversations with those neighborhoods again, you and I, that's great.
Okay. All right. City manager in here. Braxton was here a second ago. He's not here now. Okay. Staff, please reach out to them so that we can get a meeting set, hopefully on the next USD 501 school day out, so we can have. Oh. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Alice Ann Oliver from Hot One Place. I started this nest last July 13th. I am going to ask that you have this meeting in a place that's available to everyone, like the library or some neutral ground. And I'm going to ask that you give enough time that we as neighbors can circulate, because I can guarantee you there's going to be a crowd.
I don't have a problem with that at all. It doesn't make me uncomfortable to have these conversations, because it's important for everyone to be heard on this. And I imagine the committee members feel the same. And I know this has been a lengthy process, and I know that it may be bothersome, but I think it's important, just as a citizen myself. I think it's important to hear what they're talking about, so that we are on the same page going forward, regardless of how it goes, making sure that we're truly on the same page and not just from a few folks who speak the loudest, okay? So I would look to staff to set up a meeting like that in the very, very near future. Oh, and you said time to circulate. Are you thinking a month?
I think at least 2 to 4 weeks, and 4 weeks would be nice.
Okay.
Just because we all have different avenues of how we circulate information.
100%. Okay. So something 4 to 6 weeks out. Let me see if we can have a conversation.
Got it. Hi, my name is Frank Meadows. I live
Hello,
at
Frank.
16th and Boswell. Just as a brief comment, this is, I think, a perfect example of a snapshot. We're seeing a snapshot of a process. I grew up being instructed that before you knew where you were going, you have to know where you're coming from. I don't personally know where this is going. What is the end game to this process? Are we increasing housing stock for low and moderate income people in Topeka? Are we trying to create a greater urban density and have a better utilization of the lots and properties that are already established in single-family neighborhoods? And to what end? What is our ultimate goal for the Topeka, Kansas? I have grown up here. I've spent a lot of time watching city council planning commissions. I don't really get a sense that I, as a citizen individually, have an idea as to where our leaders, our elected officials, want us to go. We're more than happy to follow if you show us where you want to take us and how we're going to get there. And that's my only comment.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, with that, we are to the public comment, which no one has signed up for until today, and all those people were able to stand up and speak. So, unless our committee members have anything else?
I would like to ask that at our next meeting, we talk about the Citizen Government Review Committee's recommendation on the city auditor.
I think that would be appropriate. And since we kind of, not necessarily jumped the gun on it, but the conversation, discussion about the city manager and strong mayor, I think that would be a good conversation for the next policy and finance committee meeting. The action items that we moved today, I think we'll be able to move pretty quickly on those and get right back to some discussion. So that's perfect. City staff, we have anything else? Yes. So March 23rd, if that would be a good date for our next Policy and Finance Committee meeting, I think that would be doable on my calendar, committee members. Free? All right. Then yes, we'll go ahead and set that for the 23rd. I'm not a huge fan of 10 a.m. I know why we did it today, but I always like 1:30 meetings. I think they run smoother. Let everybody get some food in their bellies and be happy for a little bit. So, so if we could do 1:30, is that time open? Available staff? Okay. All right. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Oh, do I need